Hi, this is Phil Spencer, and you're listening to the Inner Circle podcast for the fans, by the fans.
Thank you for listening to the Inner Circle podcast, the premier podcast for Xbox One. I'm your host, KLR SKL, and you're listening to the Inner Circle special. Over the years, we've delivered so many memorable Xbox executive interviews and a bunch of Xbox news, but today, this special is a bit different. Today, we have with us Mr. Adam Boyce, CEO of Iron Galaxy, developers of the Xbox exclusive Killer Instinct, and former director of third-party games at Sony PlayStation. First and foremost, I want to thank you, Adam, for giving us the opportunity to talk with you once again.
Sure thing. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Before we jump in, though, to everything, Adam, many gamers know you mostly as one of the former faces over at PlayStation, and now you're the CEO of Iron Galaxy. But I'd like people to get to know how you got started. Tell us how your career began in the gaming industry and how you became CEO of IG.
Yeah, so it was about 21 years ago. I started as a QA tester at Electronic Arts up in Burnaby. So they had offices in California and up in Canada, in BC, and just applied sort of on a whim. Got a job as a tester on NBA Live 96, and then basically worked my way. I was at EA for 4 years, left games for just a hot minute, and then came back, worked at Next Level Games back in Vancouver on NHL hits for Midway, and then I got transferred over. Midway, basically the studio Next Level Games that I was working at, it was a contract gig, and so when my contract was up, the guys down in Chicago at Midway were like, "Hey, you're a youngster, why don't you come down and work at Midway in Chicago?" And I'm like, "What's Chicago?" So I decided to move down there, and had a great time there, met a bunch of great people, but realized how crazy the culture at Midway was. That's a whole different podcast. We could do an entire podcast on
Midway, just on
Midway's
alone?
culture. It was bananas. And then after that, Midway, I was there, worked my way up to exec producer. I worked on Slugfest Loaded, worked on Blitz the League. And then I was working on the sequel, Blitz League 2. And that's when my old boss, Scott Bayless, called me. He was at Capcom. He used to be the head of studios at Midway, so he went over to Capcom as vice president of product development and called me up one day and said, "Hey, Adam, why don't you come over here and run production for me?" So went over there, and that was crazy because I've always been a huge Capcom nut, like a huge nerd for Capcom stuff. So going over there, they said basically, "Hey, there's this new digital platform called XBLA." And XBLA was getting the drop on PSN because digital games weren't on PlayStation until about a year after XBLA launched.
Funny how all that's changed, right?
Yeah, no, it is. It is kind of crazy because they were super bullish. And so he said, "Why don't you come and run production?" So I went over there. My first project was like Super Puzzle Fighter HD.
Oh, I love that game.
And then we did Street Fighter HD Remix.
Nice.
Then we did Bionic Commando Rearmed.
Nice.
We did Wolf of the Battlefield. We did 1943. There was a bunch of cool stuff. Like I basically got there, and we were able to sort of build up the digital strategy. We did Marvelous Capcom digitally, and I think by the end of the second year, we were 5 of the top 10 best-selling XBLA games coming out of the Capcom crew. So that was great. Did that for about 4 years. Had an awesome time working on a bunch of different cool stuff, and then wanted to start my own company for a bit. So I left to start a company called Beefy Media, which was like a video game production company. And I always sort of had an entrepreneurial spirit. So I was like, hey, let's try this out, kick the tires. Ended up doing some cool stuff with Sour Patch Kids video game, where like Method Man did a music video for us, and and then co-founded the Weinstein Company Games label, did a couple mobile games, some other cool stuff.
Okay. And
then I saw this posting one day, a job posting. So I had my company and I had a bunch of contractors. It was a lot of fun. But this posting for VP of third-party relations at PlayStation opened up. And so I decided to go and apply. The process was super long. It took me about 5 months to get the job. and I didn't think I was going to get it, but I kept sort of complaining about the trials and tribulations when I was on the outside. You know,
Right.
PlayStation didn't treat me awesome as a developer, so I had a bunch of ideas of like, here's a bunch of things we could do to make things better.
Wow.
And Jack Trenton and my boss Phil Rosenberg finally said, all right, let's take a gamble on this unknown youngster and see what happens. And the rest is history, I guess.
Wow. That's crazy. That's a hell of a journey, man.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a
It's
journey.
been a fun one.
You know, definitely. I didn't even know that you had started your own company, and that's the crazy thing about it. It's funny because, you know, I think we've all played on PlayStation as kids and grown up as PlayStation gamers, and then Xbox came out, and some of us have moved from, you know, console to console. We just all have the same consoles in our households. But when you brought up some of the Xbox Live Arcade games, man, I just think about that in the impact that you had on me personally, because I loved Super Puzzle Fighter, and to me that game was so underrated, and I really wish they would like make that game backwards compatible and bring it over. And Capcom at the time was such a monster in the genre, and you know, they're not as big as they used to be, and I hope they can get back to it. But I just think about that, and now going from that to PlayStation and bringing some of the ideas that you had as a person who ran a third-party company, and thinking about how you may have not been treated fairly, and then bringing that to the company and thinking about the impact that you made at PlayStation, because it reflects in what you guys are doing now, or what they're doing now, third-party wise. That's impressive.
Yeah, thanks. No, I think that's the thing when you look at the pathway of doing all that digital stuff, and Capcom, we were so digitally focused, and it was an awesome thing. We were the first to market on a lot of the stuff. We're closely with like Mike Micah and the Backbone crew at the time. Did a lot of cool stuff, but you know, you realize how powerful that is. And the interesting thing is, a lot of the developers that I work with and met with while I was there, like we, you know, there was a bunch of different games that we were meeting with developers. Like we tried to get Hello Games to sign Joe Danger with us. We were meeting with Twisted Pixel to try to get their stuff. So a lot of the relationships I established while I was at Capcom then sort of dovetailed into my role at PlayStation. But the coolest thing that I felt that starting my own company taught me was, you know, you're only as good as the milestone payment coming in from your partner. And if you're a big publisher or a big company, it really sort of rang true, because when you start your own company from nothing and you just try to like cobble it together, every single check from every partner is like, it's your mortgage payment, right? It's putting the roof over your wife and kids in your head. And it just really hit me hard that when I got to PlayStation, I'm like, we need to make sure that we create policies and procedures that make sure that people don't hit some of those bad times, or sort of prevent publishers or you know, partnerships from going in a bad place, because I'd felt that. And I think that's one of the cool things of like that coming up from QA, you know, when I got hired at EA, I was making $5.50 an hour in Canada, which is about, I think, $3.70 American US.
Right.
When I started to sort of like, you know, eating humble pie at so many stages, I think teaches you. That would be a super hard job, the job I had at PlayStation, if you just jumped in as a noob.
Right.
You know, if you didn't really have a lot of that background, but it helped sort of color and season myself, and it was a ton of fun, man. I had fun there. It was a great time.
Man, that's a great starter from the bottom. Now we here type story.
Absolutely. And along the way, you know, even at my own company, we did I did a ton of stuff on Xbox. We did the World Gone Sour Patch Kids game. We did a ton of Avatar stuff. So if you remember the Scream Avatar outfit, RoboCop and Rocky, all that stuff I did
Oh, wow.
with my own company. And I was even back at Midway, we were huge Xbox nerds. So I think I'm at 118,000 gamer score on Xbox through the years. So up until my job at PlayStation, I definitely had done a ton of dev and playing on Xbox.
Yeah,
still do to this day.
Yeah, 360 was awesome. It was a great console.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was a great console, especially with the introduction of indie games. I discovered a lot of games through XBLA. I think a lot of fans would love for that to come back. I mean, I do appreciate the Idea Xbox program greatly. I've really discovered a lot of great games. Like I can't put down Ark. Have you played Ark?
Yeah.
Ark is just so addicting.
Yes. Dude, I'm playing Ark. I liked it so much. I was playing on Xbox One. I played it on PS4. Now I just set up a new PC, and I'm playing on PC now too.
Wow.
So can't get enough of that game. There's just a ton of stuff. I've been. It's funny because since leaving PlayStation, I've just been doing a lot of playing a lot of Nintendo Switch.
Nice.
Quite a bit of and a ton of PC gaming. Just because there's a lot of stuff that's breaking. Like the early access program on Steam is super cool. There's a lot of cool stuff there to try out, and I'm just weirdly voracious about all kinds of content and games. Yeah. So I'm just checking it out. PlayStation, obviously, we're so focused on every single game coming out. How's it coming along? Playing our own stuff. But now I sort of have to take a step back and be like, okay, I got to be more omnivorous and eat sort of from every single trough out there.
Right. So now that you're here at Iron Galaxy, you're the CEO of Iron Galaxy. What is the biggest difference between working at Sony and working there? And how does the experiences there affect you and what you're trying to do at Iron Galaxy to make it a bigger studio?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, the reason that I made the change is that, I had an awesome time at PlayStation. We had a great relationship with the publishers and developers. And, I just sort of woke up one day and I was like, what is, if I look at my entire career history, what's the part that made me feel the most fulfilled? And it was really about making games. Back at Midway, when we were making Blitz the League together as a team. Mm-hmm. And the crazy thing coming to Iron Galaxy is that we got about a dozen people that were on that Blitz development team here in Chicago. So it's kind of nice to reunite with them. But the biggest difference for me is being able to, at PlayStation was great because you could talk to developers and help them bring their games to Marketplace and put Firewatch on stage and The Witness. Right. And that's cool. And we're helping different developers sort of make their dreams come true. But I kind of, at the end of every E3, the first question people would ask me the night after the conference, the first hour after the conference, what are we doing next show? What are you guys going to be doing next show? How are you going to beat that one? And after the third year, you're like, Jesus, just give me a minute. We just finished. Because then we had PSX that we came up with that idea of let's just do a celebration for the fans.
Right.
Let's get really close and have a more intimate conversation with them. And that's where PSX sort of was born out of the idea of, I was actually inspired by going to EVE Fan Fest, which CCP does over in Iceland. And I was blown away at how deeply they interact with their fans. Mm-hmm. They have these cool rooms where they bring in for EVE Online, they bring in the best combat specialists in the game, the top dozen players in the world. Right. And then they meet with the combat designers and they do the same thing with the leaders of the different coalitions, and they have very private meetings. And it was so intimate to me that's why the inspiration for PSX was what if we could do that with our fans? Nobody's really doing this in the console space on a big scale. Mm-hmm. Obviously BlizzCon, a lot of publishers were, right, or certain companies, right, Minecon and stuff like that, but no real sort of platforms were doing it. So coming up with that idea just doubled our workload. The first time we came up with the concept was I think we had 4.5 months to execute. So it was
right,
cobbling it together. And then creating more work around, stage presentation, stuff like that. But after doing that and having 2 big shows a year where you're and then there's Gamescom and other stuff that you're sort of prepping and doing deals and putting together sort of promotions for, mm-hmm, you sort of stand back and you're okay, what's next?
Right.
And to me, it was fulfillment is around creating stuff from scratch. And so I chatted with Dave Lang, who founded Iron Galaxy, and I said, yo, what are you guys up to? Because you got all the markings of a great, fantastic, phenomenal, world-class developer. Mm-hmm. What's cracking? And he was like, hey, let's talk a little bit more. And here we are now. And I'm literally been working on game pitches and stuff like that today. So
wow,
it's super exciting, super invigorating. There's a lot of cool stuff we're cooking up, but it allows me to use muscles that have been sort of dormant for a while,
right,
and just really sort of fills my gas tank every day. It's really awesome.
It's cool to know that Iron Galaxy is working on some new projects, man. I'm so used to them being kind of a great team that make great fighters. Because I remember Iron Galaxy, I believe, worked on Street Fighter 3, which
Third Strike, yep,
which was to me a phenomenal game with the tech blocks. I thought it was great, and the parries, and then they did a wonderful job taking over for Double Helix with Killer Instinct, which they just improve upon that game. And now with the Ultimates packs coming out, they just done a phenomenal job. So seeing what they do next is going to be very interesting, especially knowing you're in the boat So if I'm really looking forward to what you guys produce. I will definitely be DMing you like, hey, this game is hot, or this game is, come on, Adam.
unless it isn't, and then you'll be honest with me. And you can't sleep on Dive Kick. Don't you dare sleep on Dive Kick, man. The best 2-button fighter in the whole industry.
I never played Dive Kick. I've seen it though.
You never played Dive Kick?
I haven't played it.
It's Adam Hart, who's one of the guys that works here, Keats, as he goes on the Shuriken forums. He came with a concept which is basically a 2-button fighter. 1 button is dive and 1 button is kick.
Right.
I think it's on Xbox One, PS4. It's on basically all the platforms, 360, PS3. Right. And it's like, I think $5. And it's super fun. There's a bunch of different characters, and it's 2-button fighter. That's it. You can't even analog. It's just literally... It's hilarious. I can't believe you've never tried it. You gotta check it out.
I've seen IDX them promoting it, but I'm like, what is this game? I never.
It's super goofy, but it actually gets really, really frenetic because every player has 1,000 health, and every kick does 1,000,000 damage. So it's one hit kill every match.
That's hilarious.
It's amazing. You should check it out.
That's funny. I'm definitely going to check that out. That's very interesting. Oh, man. So obviously big news coming out of Microsoft. They did a great presentation with the guys over at Eurogamer and Digital Foundry. I don't know if you guys have got your hands on a Scorpio dev kit yet, or if you have an NDA, but based on what you've seen, based on this talk of these mid-generation consoles, what is your thought on the future of, mid-gen consoles, and how does that progress the future? Because the technology seems, at least for the Xbox side, really seems like a big step up from what the Xbox One originally was.
Sure.
And, it's a lot of focus on 4K resolution, but there's some things in that console that I really was impressed with that is slightly different than maybe what the PS4 Pro may be doing. Have you compared both consoles and said to yourself, well, this is really good and this is really good, and how do you see Iron Galaxy fitting in that, and how does that affect the future of the industry, you think?
Well, I think the great thing about it is that, both companies, both Microsoft and PlayStation, are listening to the gamers and being like, hey, I want this sort of step up in performance. I want my games to look better. We're at the point in the console cycle right now where if you put like this big rig that I put together that I have at home now, and you crank up all the settings, right? It's just like off the chains visually, right?
Right.
So the fact that now the console companies are hip to that, and they're giving people options to say, hey, I want this upgrade. Like playing Horizon Zero Dawn on the PS4 Pro was just blew me away. Now I played on the regular one. I'm like, that's still great, but it's just that much better. And I feel like Scorpio is going to deliver the next step as well. So I think it's great for developers because they always want to push as many pixels as humanly possible. It's great for gamers that want that. I don't think everyone that ever bought a PlayStation or Xbox is going to want to upgrade.
Right.
This is a great thing, I think, for people that are like the guys like you and me that are like, always want the latest tech fix. And for developers, great because they can always show off better fidelity things. When you go to a friend's house and you've worked on a game, even if it's coming out on PC, and like, yo, show us what you're up to, right? You usually are showing them off in a living room, right? You're not like, hey, come to my dark den. We're going to turn on the glowing keyboard and show you what's cracking, So the, having consoles in the living room that have that higher fidelity, now there is more 4K TVs and stuff like that. It's super cool. We love it because you don't have to throttle things back as much, right? You can, turn it up to 11,
right?
As far as visual goes.
That's very interesting because, Phil came out recently and talked about how they were approaching devs and they wanted to make the console dev friendly. And when I read that, it reminded me of what made 360 great was it was so easy to develop for. And so many people, so many developers jumped on that platform early on and felt it was so much easier. Whereas the PS3 had to sell, and the sell was very impressive. But its strength really came from the first party developers.
PS3 no bones about it. Whether I was working at PlayStation or not working on PlayStation, everyone knows that PS3 was really, really difficult to develop for, especially out the gate with cell processor and SPU stuff. It was super hard, and there was a lot of proprietary stuff. I mean, ironically, the reason because PS3 and then even Unreal on PS3 was so difficult, that's why Iron Galaxy started, right? Dave spun out from Midway to sort of and saw the industry having challenges with PS3 the Unreal 3 engine and sort of made a business out of it. And we ended up working on a bunch of different things that were on Unreal, like stuff like, BioShock Infinite, and BioShock 2 and stuff like that. So, that obtuseness, I think, definitely harmed them. But then in the long run, it's kind of like once you get warmed up on that stuff, I think near the end of the console cycle, like the fact that when GTA 5 dropped at the end of the PS3 cycle and looked like just far and away absolutely breathtakingly incredible. I think at the end, when everyone realized how to min-max the cell processing stuff and the SPU stuff, I think games at the end were like phenomenal, like visually better and stuff like that. But the 360 was always way more open, and I think PlayStation learned a lot of lessons from that. That's why PS4 was a lot more dev friendly. And now I feel like Xbox One and PS4 are both pushing hard to be super developer friendly, super accessible, which makes it more of a commoditized approach. So that way the content itself can tell the story. And the great content should sell units and bring gamers to the happiness.
Right. I'm sitting here saying to myself, man, as a developer, one of the things that Phil stated was that he wanted devs to start from their max settings and work their way down. And funny thing is, I didn't even know that most dev kits are actually more powerful than the console. I didn't know that. So I was really impressed when I first saw the dev kit of Scorpio. I was like, holy smokes, why why is this so above and beyond what the actual platform is? And they're taking this approach where they want people to start literally at PC ultra levels and just try to make it fit. Is that normal, or do people normally, most devs just start from, as a developer, do you guys normally just start from the PC version, port over from the lowest setting and work your way up?
No, it's always from the top down. And that's actually one of the reasons why things like Scorpio and PS4 Pro are easier. I say easier, and every engineer right now that's listening is like rolling their eyes. Okay, we have a business type saying easier to develop for, but the reason it's easier is because the assets are usually created in super, super high fidelity, right? Especially when you bake out textures, when polygons, you have to reduce them in characters to sort of fit performance and stuff like that. So the good news is the source material is usually super, super high definition, high resolution, and so bringing it to these higher performing machines is easier because you just go, we'll just export the higher poly count version of this character or the higher resolution texture.
Right.
People have done ports from lower quality. So for example, when Iron Galaxy did Borderlands 2 for Vita, obviously you can't push out the same amount of pixels as a 360 on a Vita, right? You just can't do it. So you have to sort of downgrade them, and you have to create this sort of process for reducing the textures and the polygons. But because we build these things at such high def, that you still have to do that work, obviously.
Right.
Again, I'm just picturing an engineer sitting across the table from me being like, Adam, just shut up. Just stop talking. Just shut up. Dave Lang probably right now is listening going, Jesus, what the? It's less difficult. Of course, there's all the other aspects of performance, right? There's particle effects. How many different things can you have on screen at the same time? So there's a lot of knobs you have to tweak. And ironically, Iron Galaxy, we get actually hired to do a lot of performance improvements on different games here and there when it comes to just trying to max them out and throttle them up as much as possible and get the most amount of frames per second, stuff like that. But it's not like you have to re-art everything. That would be that kind of undertaking. Like that's why when Call of Duty Modern Warfare came out remastered, I was blown away because it did just such a phenomenal job, and those assets were not high def when they made it,
right?
Not to the level of definition. So you have to literally go back and art everything from scratch. You have the source material, but upgrading that, whether it's full throttle or the stuff that LucasArts and Tim Schafer, the Double Fine crew did, that's super, super hard to do. That is like whenever people says, hey, can you take this old game that doesn't have those new assets and bring it up to snuff, it's way harder than you'd think.
Right. It's I definitely know that that's a difficult thing to do. I just was reading up today on Phantom Dust, and they're talking about Phantom Dust being a 4K resolution. I'm like, really? Like you guys are able to do that? That's definitely wasn't an easy task to pull something, a game that probably was at the time barely HD, like 480p at the time, and now You're talking about 4K resolution. That's impressive.
Well, yeah, I think that the interesting thing about 4K resolution is it's to crank it up. Like I can't remember if it was the Towerfall guys, Matt from Towerfall, or somebody was joking to me one time. It's like, yeah, I just flipped the switch now. My game's 4K, and it's an 8-bit game playing in 4K. So sometimes what'll happen is people will be like, yeah, I'm just playing, a lower res game, but it's fine at 4K,
right?
Because even though it's not actually doing any upscaling, it's not doing stuff. But the coolest thing I saw is when we announced, like when we were doing, meetings with publishers, and we told them the specs about the PS4 Pro. Going around later on and seeing what people had done with the excellent performance was super cool. So as a gamer on the outside, I'm super excited to see what, obviously you've been seeing some awesome stuff coming out of PS4 Pro stuff, but to see the Scorpio stuff as well, I'm, as a gamer, I'm super excited about what's possible.
Why do you think gamers think that the original consoles will hold these newer mid-gen consoles back? It's one of the things that irritates me the most when people say that games still won't.
We gotta hold it back because there might be an Xbox 2.
No, well,
right, that kind of stuff. The PS5.
No, more like if you guys are developing a game, you're developing it for the base console, so it's always going to hold back that newer console. Like the PS4 version will hold back the PS4 Pro version, and it won't be as good or look as good because they won't be maxing out the power of the Pro because of PS4. Or same thing with the OG Xbox One. They won't be able to max out Scorpio, which is why a lot of people are always asking for exclusives. Like, no, just let that console get exclusives, because then you could fully max out, Dev could fully max it out. But if you're making a game for Xbox One or PS4, it kind of holds that game back.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Right. That's what I think.
There's no developer on this earth would want to hold back any aspect of their game. Right. Like if you're going out, if you're single guy going out on a date, like you're not gonna wear like mediocre stuff because you don't like, you're gonna go all out. Right. You're gonna do your best every time. And the idea of somebody holding something back. There's so many misnomers from the game industry, like from fans and stuff like that, of like even the rivalry stuff between Xbox and PlayStation. Like we were all like, dude, it's super excited. Like when cool things were happening, we're like right on, and giving each other daps and stuff like that, both publicly and privately. And there's just so many, I think, misnomers of like, no, that's not, nobody would hold back the best version. Can you imagine somebody being, working for 3 years on a project and be like, I'm going to hold it back because I want to make it run good? No, you're going to do your best. You're going to put your best foot forward every time, especially developers, right? They're all nerd. Every one of them are content nerds. I've never met an engineer that's like, man, I don't really care. Like they want to get the best performance out, and if they can push it forward with a new rev of a console or a new firmware update, they're going to do that.
Right. Absolutely, I agree. I never like the notion of people saying lazy devs. Gamers.
No, that is terrible. That is, especially now being back on this side.
Yeah.
Any or saying that one person was responsible. They screwed up this animation, or they did this, right. And just no. It's just you as game. I think that's where the frustrum culling topic and stuff like that came up around explaining things on the horizon. I think that's what the backlash was. Is there's this huge chasm of understanding, I think, of what the actual game development process is and what people think it is, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like an episode of Silicon Valley where you just like crack some jokes and all of a sudden the software is built. Like it's a huge, long, arduous process. And I think the industry, both development side and the fan side, I think it's one of the most underserved aspects of development. I would love to, not necessarily a reality show, but like have a camera crew interacting with a game developer like through a 2 or 3 year cycle. Of course, then people get bored. They just be like, "Why is this game coming up, you lazy devs? Why did they have a coffee break?" And it's that lack of understanding. I think we should all work harder to try to be a little bit more. Also, like you wait for great stuff. I mean, I think I remember waiting for Warcraft 2 to come out, and then they're like, it's delayed, and I'm like, fine. It's going to be amazing when it comes out. Right. I don't give a shit if it's another 3, 6, 8, 9 months.
Right.
Like if it's going to be better, then let it take its time. But we're so impatient now. Where is it? These lazy idiots. And then if it does come out and there's 3 bugs or one animation that was on a PC version, and then be like, this is ridiculous.
Right.
Like, just chill out. Just hold off for a bit. We're not curing cancer. We're playing video games.
Yeah. I think social media plays a role in that because we have so much access. Whereas before we didn't have that access, so you didn't know. You just got a magazine, you just read it, and you just wait.
Well, even the whole like premise of people being mad at other consoles that they don't own, or they probably do.
Right.
Most people that are fans of one probably own the other one, probably. And I've never understood that hatred or anger towards the other side, because I'm like, it's kind of like the analogy I like to use, like walking into a buffet, right? Big, huge buffet, and be like, why do they have beef and broccoli? Fuck beef and broccoli. I do not like beef and broccoli. They should not serve beef and broccoli to anyone because I don't like it, and you shouldn't get it. Like, wait a minute. If there's a great game on another console, why is that hurting me?
Right.
I'm not, I'm not there buying it, or I'm not interested in it. I don't understand why there's so much anger and frustration. It's like, then just don't. It's like if something comes out and you don't like it, don't buy it.
It's the fandom, man. It's the pandemonium.
Why?
I don't know. Why? It's like fanatics. I try to use this analogy often. I say that the consoles are like your favorite sports team. People are fanatics, and they.
I know, but we don't have that in any other sort of piece of stuff.
We don't.
Right?
We don't.
Like when Newmarks, when I was DJing for a couple of years, forgetful years. And if you had Newmarks turntables versus Technics, you weren't like, dude, you got Newmarks? Those, like, people be sitting at a table and nobody's arguing about Android versus iPhone. I mean, unless you're a super Apple fan, but usually you're like, whatever, your phone is your phone and it's doing your thing. You don't walk over people's houses and be like, why do you have a Panasonic TV, bro? Right. Vizio's way better, or whatever. Like, it's just, it's weird. I mean, and of course, working for one of the consoles, you sort of like, when we did the sharing video, it was more of like, it's the other policies are goofy, and they fixed this stuff, which is awesome.
Right.
Like, I think there was a huge eye on both sides of what was happening, and both sides are responding and trying to improve over time. But I still, to this day, and I see people now, it's like, console's been out for 4 years, and people are still angry. I'm like, why? There's so many things, especially in this day and age. Like, there's a dark cloud over this nation and a lot of parts of the world right now. Right. Like, let's just hug someone, No,
I agree.
Be happy for someone.
It's funny. Trust me. I try to be as positive as I possibly can, even if we are preferred Xbox podcast. Because what we try to do at Tick is, Xbox was getting such a beating early on, and when I had the interview with Phil, I told him, listen, a good portion of that is due to some of the messaging that you guys put out there. And a lot of people didn't agree with it, but we understand the effort and see the changes that you're making. But I wanted to try to help make sure that the right information was getting out and report news. And I liked 360 over PS3 at the time, but I still had a PS3. Like right now, I have the Xbox One Slim, but I have a PS4 Pro and plan to get Scorpio. And I have, all the games that's out, Nier Automata and Horizon Zero Dawn and stuff like that. So, I'm a gamer first and foremost. I just prefer the Xbox console for other reasons.
Totally.
But, I get a lot of Xbox fans hit me up consistently. And then they found out that I was going to have you on the show. So you know what they're asking me. That E3 2014, you just brought it up.
Yeah, I did.
How did that happen? How did you come up with that? When did that happen? When did you see this and things like that? People blame Microsoft for going first because it's like giving PlayStation ammunition.
So that's also the goofiest. That's another misnomer. I'm glad that we're just hammering these out. We're just smashing these things. So the idea that any aspect of a presentation that you spend months and months preparing would change, like there's a bunch of big conspiracy that like the cost of the console never changed.
Okay.
You can't run a business and do years, a 5-year sort of profitability plan and then change the price of the console like the second that somebody else changes theirs. It's not like that. So for that one, and the crazy thing is I talked to everyone, even people that worked at Microsoft, during that first initial reveal of Xbox One, because we had a big, huge team meeting and we all got together to watch it together. And we're watching it and it's TV, sports, TV. And we're like, what is it just pinch me? What is happening? This is so strange. And then it was, I think, 4 days before E3 when they released the policies or how you'd be able to not share your games physically, but then have 10 guest accounts. And it was and I'll never forget because I was watching a video, and it was a bunch of all the Giant Bomb guys, Jeff Gerstmann, Patrick Klepek at the time, And they were sort of like, and Brad, and they're all like, so, and they're reading them out, and I'm watching this, and these are guys that I have a ton of respect for, right? And we've been friends for a lot of years, a ton of respect for them, and they spend, I think, 45 or 50 minutes being like, so what is this? What? So if you do this, and they were so baffled by what they were saying, and I was like, it is the fact that these guys that have played tons and tons of games throughout the years and been at basically every console launch, and if they can't figure it out, man, I was just like, and I was kind of sitting there scratching my head, and I was like, because the website that they had put out was like, I think 5 pages sort of explaining what you can and can't do, how family counts work and stuff like that. I was like, what if we just did 1 page that was like 4 bullet points? Like, what if it was 2 bullet points? And then it was a day later, and I was hopping on a plane down to LA for rehearsals, and I came up with the idea. I'm like, what if we just did one thing? Because they're not allowing sharing. You have to be connected. What if it was just like we hand something to, like, we just say, this is how you share, and we hand the thing over. And I emailed it at the time to Jack Tretton, Shu Yoshida, Scott, basically all the senior vice presidents, my boss, Phil Rosenberg, Guy Longworth, who's the guy head of marketing. I said, what if we just did this like weird little video where it's like, this is how you share, and just boom. And so I landed, I told PR, they're like, okay, that's cool. And the whole video crew was there. And I said, hey, Shu, I want to give you this idea, and I want you to be the guy. And so she was like, I love it. I'm like, great. And then the video team was like, great, we're going to shoot Shu doing it. And she was like, but Adam, it was your idea, so you do it with me. I'm like, no. That is not new. That is not part of this deal. But he sort of convinced me. He's like, no, this was your idea. And the guys loved it. Like, they loved the concept. And then the discussion was like, do we put it in the show or not? We ended up not putting it in the show, but sort of tweeting it out during the show. While Jack Tretton was saying, we're going to allow sharing and all that stuff, which wasn't a change. That was always what we were doing.
Right.
But it was, I think it's, especially for a lot of super fans, they're like, dude, that was like, at the time though, it was what everyone was thinking.
Right.
It was just all we were doing. And I think to this day, people are still like, oh, savage. I'm like, no, it was literally just, here's how you share, boop, because they weren't going to allow it on the other console, and that's weird. And then they changed it within a month or two, I think, right?
Yeah, it wasn't that long.
So it was all fine. And then when people saw the video after that, they're like, what is this video? But I don't even know, 16 million views later, it was crazy. Wow. It was surreal. Because then people would be like, oh, you're the sharing game guy. I'm like, yeah, basically. I became like the Alf of the games industry. Hey, do the sharing game thing. Hey, take a photo with me sharing your game. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. But I did give my copy of Killzone back to Shu when I left the company. Okay. That was the one that gave me. So
that's funny. I mean, listen, I think some Xbox fans looked at that and saw some policies that were interesting. There were some things in there that was interesting, like the family sharing thing where you had 10 friends. Like it reminded me of the T-Mobile. Remember back in the day, T-Mobile had the
you
family
can add
share
whatever
plan.
9 family members.
Right. I thought that was cool, and that kind of reminded me of the PlayStation. I forget what it's called when you guys do the sharing as well, like 2 people on the game at the same time. One of those share play. There you go. And it reminded me of that as well. I'm like 10 people in your circle, and you guys can share games. And then later on, I started thinking to myself, damn, I don't know if devs would like that. Like, how many people wouldn't buy games if they all could just play off of each other's accounts?
I think the challenge that they had there was a lot of new sort of disruptive concepts and ideas that hadn't really been vetted with publishers or developers or fans. So at the time, I sort of internally joked of like, this is the greatest console for residents of Redmond, Washington, because for people that have like that only buy, like I now as a gamer almost exclusively buy digitally.
Right.
And then like one of the people at work, they're like, oh, I'm still waiting for a Mario Kart from Amazon. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Why are you not buying digital? And it's like, well, it's file size and stuff like that. But, and the crazy thing is like their policy at the time for always on is not unlike similar to what
we're doing now,
iOS was, or what Steam was, or games like Destiny and Division, which are required online. Right. And now it's less of a big deal. It's still, to a lot of people, I still want to play offline if I'm going up in the middle of nowhere and or on an airplane, playing Fallout on an airplane, which I've done a few times. It was just too many new things, and they just weren't vetted out.
Right.
From my opinion.
Right.
That's just my opinion of at the time. And it's really interesting to be like that kernel of time. There was just too many things that were new and different that I don't think we're thinking about people. Like we've bought as gamers, we've bought ever since like I got in a bus with my brother when I was like 9 or 10 or whatever to go and buy Super Mario Brothers. Like and hold it in our hands. There's just something, we're not yet at that point where you know the younger generations probably don't understand purchasing and holding media because they've got their Netflix and they got their iPhones. Right. But we do. We like the majority of the gamers, right? The average gamer is probably what, 35 or whatever. Right. 32, and you taking that away or disallowing that to try to drive. Now I agree with some of the fundamental philosophy of like trying to drive more revenue towards the publishers and developers, which is I think why there is so much digital sales now. But you can't just rip off that Band-Aid and expect everyone to cheer. Yeah. That is a slower pace. Or if you like Steam has always been that, has never changed. And so you can, when you start like that, you can enforce things and change your terms of service. But you can't. I think it's sort of you're playing with fire when you look at a fan base that has loved things a certain way and said, hey, we're going to pivot so hard that we're going to change the way you do things, and now the physical thing you bought is no longer worth anything when you go to a store. Like that's a huge punch in the gut. Yeah. You know, as people that trade in their games and want their $25, $30, maybe even $2 if it's a couple years later. But like to take that away from gamers was just, I just felt as a gamer, I'm like, oh, you're reaching in my pocket now, you know? Yeah, it was definitely something that was ahead of its time, especially coming off the 360 PS3 era, where, you know, GameStop was huge. It was a huge player, and, you know, retail sales were big, and really digital was more looked at for indie games. Yeah, it was a cute little side thing. It was more of a small thing, small, you know, cheap price titles and things like that. Nothing really major. Most people bought retail, so I think dumping that right off the gate probably turned a lot of people off. Me personally, I liked it because I was already going digital. I had so many iPhone and iPad, and to me, it wasn't a big deal. The always online, I had internet, I never turned it off, you know. But, you know, long term or worldwide, obviously, it did affect a lot of people. So I think that the changes, it helped make Microsoft make a lot of changes from its leadership into what it's doing today, and you can see the effects, the residual waves of what that's accomplished long term. And now we're so digital now. You look at PS fire sales and Xbox Live deals with gold and all these things, and all these deals happening. I'm just waiting for some sort of digital trade-in system when you get like 10% back on all your old trade-ins. Sitting there that you're not playing, you know. Totally. And I've had people say to me, well, that doesn't make sense. How is that going to work? I'm like, that's revenue that will eventually go back to them buying more stuff from these stores. Yeah, you know, totally. I think it would be a great idea if they were able to figure that out. But yeah, I think in general, with the ebb and flow of any sort of, you know, anything that's commercial, like the commercial battle between the consoles and stuff like that, it made, and what happened then as a byproduct of that is now Nintendo with Nintendo Switch are super developer friendly, right? And they never were before. We're working on some Nintendo stuff, and so working with them has been amazing. And it's like, and it's funny because they're like, Adam, you know, what you guys did at PlayStation really inspired us, and I'm like, what? That's crazy to think about, you know, a chucklehead from small town Canada, you know, and then now the guys from Nintendo are like, hey, we want to be, you know, we want to be more dev friendly. So it has that ripple effect, but the good news is every change and every improvement makes everyone better. Like from the backwards compatibility stuff that Microsoft did, I don't think they would have done that if they were crushing it and in number one place, right? They did it to make sure that they're making fans, you know, appeasing their fans and making them happy, which is, I think, awesome, because then it's like everyone's raising their game on a daily and weekly basis, and it makes gamers be the winners every time over. Right. And if one's doing one thing that something else doesn't, then, you know, it's that battle drives capitalism, right? It's the core engine of our free market society. Right. Well, Adam, as we move forward, man, listen, you are, you know, and you're running a third party developer now. Like you said, you have to do a little bit more, have a little bit more variety in your diet when it comes to gaming and things like that. But, you know, one of the things I wanted to ask as somebody who was running third party deals,
You know, there's a lot of third-party deals going on. You know, Sony recently just had a great, successful, first, second quarter with deals with Persona and Nier Automata and, the Yakuza. Those are old third-party exclusives. But that's made them very successful. When it comes to third-party deals, though, you know, the term money hat is a big deal. I want to try to get your perspective in who initiates the initial conversation, and how do the terms and the arrangements, like the agreements, how does that all come about? Who determines how the deals happen?
It's completely different every single scenario, and obviously I can't go into that much details, but like holistically speaking, they don't happen unless a partner is interested in it, right? There's obviously a combination of passion from the platforms and then passion from the partners, and then that sort of meets somewhere in the middle, and then whatever helps them boost their sales, whether it's providing distribution, you know, like for No Man's Sky, PlayStation sort of did the physical distribution for that. Other games wouldn't have happened, like Street Fighter, you know, they talked very publicly about it being a deeper partnership. And on the flip side, you know, Microsoft doing a Tomb Raider deal, which is important for them, where there's an Uncharted on the other side of things. So it depends on multitude of things, but generically speaking, the master goal is to drive mutually beneficial situation to both partners, right?
Right.
And it's there's a lot of misnomers around how they work, and of course, if I gave that all away, then the lawyers would be all up in my business. But everyone's different, and I think with the Japanese ones, you can obviously imagine that there's been a long historical relationship between PlayStation and a lot of those Japanese developers, and but of a lot of it, it's just like it made sense, right? Sometimes it's just for us to put it on a stage at E3, or when I was over there, or for Microsoft to put on stage, there has to be something in reverse, right? There has to be you're going to stick around on our platform for a bit, and in exchange we get to elevate you to the level of being a partner title, sort of thing.
Right.
So it's a mixture of passion from the people that work there about what they think is going to do well. It's passion from the partners that are interested in pursuing, because running any business, your goal is to sell as many units as humanly possible, and that if a partnership feels like it's going to bear that kind of fruit, then that is usually when people would pursue that sort of stuff.
What is your thoughts on, the fans now no longer wanting third-party exclusives? It's one of the things that I've seen a lot now. Obviously, the people that I talk to, or the people that I see, is a very small circle. Most casuals, which is probably the majority of people who purchase consoles, they could care less, honestly. But the hardcore do care. Like, they see these things, and if a game like Tomb Raider, for example, which was a very big deal to a lot of PlayStation gamers at the time, if that game winds up being exclusive, which it was, or timed exclusive anyway, a lot of people didn't like it. And then you have vice versa, where Nier 1 was on 360, but Nier 2 wasn't. And, a lot of Xbox fans felt concerned about that, and they may not even see that title hit the Xbox platform. Do you think fans have a genuine gripe about third-party games should always be multi-platform and exclusive should come from first-party only?
I think, I saw the conversation a lot, obviously, but it happened. It's like the ebb and flow with GTA 4, GTA 3 was only on PlayStation. GTA 4 was a partnership with Microsoft. GTA 5 was back to PlayStation. Call of Duty sort of went back and forth. I think I hear the concerns loud and clear from the gamers, but at the same time, usually it's because they want more stuff on their own thing that they're championing. And so if you look at the macro level, people that love Nier are going to buy the console that Nier's on, and that's not a huge amount of people. That's it's a cross section. Same with Horizon and Bloodborne and stuff like that. And conversely, it's same is true with Halo and Crackdown and Gears. Right. And I think that's sort of a mixing now. I know first party and third party stuff, but if the partner needs that to be successful and wants that to be successful, I can understand why gamers can be mad about it, because then they have to buy a second console. But unfortunately, it's kind of like taxes. It's inevitable. These things happen. I wish we didn't have to pay as much taxes, but at the same time, it's obviously nobody's ever going to do a deal that isn't beneficial for the company, the companies themselves.
Right.
So it's but it's a tough situation. I get the feedback, right? I get when people are frustrated that things are on one thing and another, but it's sort of like the seasons. Like they come and go, and sometimes you get one in your corner, and sometimes you don't.
Right. Well, you know, I obviously would love to have had Street Fighter V on the Xbox, being that Street Fighter 4 was on.
But
Xbox.
You got Killer Instinct.
We
instead.
do have Killer Instinct. Killer Instinct is an amazing game made by
Thank you.
Iron Galaxy. Looking forward to
That's right.
Hopefully a new season 4 comes out. I would love to see new characters and some fatalities, more fatalities and things like that. That'd be pretty dope if that was to happen in the future. So listen, Adam, I'm very grateful for you coming on the show, man. We're coming up on our last question. And, you know, I sit here and I'm thinking about what you guys got going on at IG. I know you can't say anything, but what like, you know, being there now, what is your goals over at Iron Galaxy, and what is it that you would like to push more? Being that that company is normally known for its fighting game prowess, how do you plan to try to change that from being just a fighting game studio to being one of the top tier third-party studios in the industry?
Well, that's the secret sauce. But I think multiplayer gaming in general is just something we've always loved to be a part of, right? We're helping work on Dreadnought, which is a game by 6 Foot and Jaeger, which is 5-on-5 MOBA in space, which is super, super awesome. But I love just like we work on quite a few different products at any one time, and the diversity of content. We're doing some stuff that I can't talk about yet that I'm just literally every time we have a meeting about it, I'm losing my mind playing the game and having a great time. We got some more stuff that we'll be talking about in the next sort of 6 months. But for us, it's just about showing people what we're great at. And I feel like multiplayer gaming is a huge part of what we're great at, and just the high quality, high fidelity gaming. So I wish I could talk more about what we're cooking up. But once we do announce it, then we'll definitely be able to, I'll come back on and give you guys some behind the scenes stuff of how we basically develop game ideas and stuff. It's super fun. I love it.
That would be awesome. Have you guys thought about crossplay? That's one of the new things. Crossplay. Microsoft is open to doing crossplay. PlayStation has been doing crossplay with PC. But for some apparent reason, we can't get these two consoles to crossplay with each other.
I know. It's almost like the two console companies need to talk to each other to figure this out.
Yeah, like I don't understand.
Because as a gamer, you know, it's that that ubiquity of multiplayer access would be great, but at the same time, we all got to be realistic, right? They're not necessarily going to, like, whose best interest is that from a company's perspective, right? That's always something to weigh into a situation like that, a balance like that.
Right.
Like, does it really make sense? Are we ever going to see a crossover between AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint? Are they going to bury the hatchet and really do like a combo deal between the three companies? Probably not, right? Because that's the nature of their business. They're closed networks. Just like why, you know, Apple doesn't play nice with Android, with Google. So you know, over time, I think we'll see what bears fruit. But you know, it's a tough one. And then yet PC lives in this wonderful neutral land, you know, chaotic neutral land of people being able to play with them. So I'm hopeful, but at the same time, I completely understand the business perspective of these closed ecosystems that, you know, all the security side of things and all that stuff is super important to them. So
yeah,
crossing my fingers, but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, I just think about these things because I'm like, I know the Final Fantasy 14 devs have been trying to bring this game to Xbox, but you know, Microsoft doesn't want to do crossplay because they want to do crossplay with PC and PlayStation, and Microsoft was willing to do PC but not PlayStation. And I'm just sitting here like, you have an opportunity to get an MMO of this caliber. You know, and I'm a Final Fantasy fan. Yeah, growing up on JRPGs and stuff like that. My favorite game of all time is Chrono Trigger. I love that game. Nice. I swear, I don't care whatever console that game comes out for, I am buying that game. Like, I'm a super
and you
fanboy.
Won't complain if it's on the new Amiga or whatever. You're gonna go buy it anyway.
That thing could be on
like Zelda. Of course, I want Zelda on my PlayStation from Xbox.
Yeah, I mean,
it's never gonna happen, but I'm not gonna complain. I bought a Switch because I love that.
Right.
And,
yeah. No, I definitely would. I would buy anything for that game again, especially if they rebooted it like Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah,
that would be impressive.
Awesome.
That'd definitely be awesome. But yeah, you know, hopefully Microsoft and Sony can figure some things out and maybe get one or two games to play together, because you know everybody's always popping crap with each other. It would be great just to see Xbox fans go against PlayStation fans for once and just see, you know, who is the better gamers and things like that.
Yeah, who wins in that scenario?
Who wins in that scenario? I know, that's just funny stuff. But anyway, yeah. Listen, Adam. Listen, I'm very grateful once again for you coming on, man, giving me the inside scoop on what happened at PlayStation while you were there, what's going on with Iron Galaxy, some history on yourself. It was a great conversation, and I know the fans will be definitely ecstatic and excited to hear about it. So thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun, and we'll do it again sometime soon when we have more stuff to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you.